We're back now on Deadline White House. The impeachment inquiry started with just two things: a whistleblower complaint and a rough transcript of a phone call. But in the mere 24 days since then, nonstop closed-door testimony has shown those were just the tip of a very big iceberg. Just this week, some of the main characters in the Ukraine saga have helped fill in the blanks. Watch this. We're going to try to walk you through this. They've steadily helped build a body of evidence that increasingly implicates the president. This started on Monday with Trump's former Russia advisor and Ukraine advisor, Fiona Hill. She described her initial alarm with the fact that Rudy Giuliani was essentially running a shadow foreign policy for the president's political gain that bypassed traditional channels, and detailed the concerns of her boss, John Bolton, who said he did not want any part of the so-called drug deal, his words, that Trump's allies were pursuing with Ukraine. Bolton even told Ms. Hill to alert White House lawyers. Then on Tuesday, George Kent added onto that testimony. He's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in charge of Ukraine. Kent told House investigators that he raised early concerns about Giuliani and Ukraine, but says Mulvaney told him to, quote, lay low. Kent's testimony also introduced us to that group that called itself the Three Amigos, elbowing other officials at the State Department out of the way. So it makes sense that on Wednesday, we then heard from a former senior advisor to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. His name is Michael McKinley. He has worked there for nearly 40 years for both Republicans and Democrats, and he revealed that he quit out of concern for the mistreatment of diplomats. But it was yesterday that things finally came full circle. Gordon Sondland, one of those Three Amigos we just talked about, broke with the president, insisting it was Donald Trump who personally directed him to work with Giuliani on Ukraine. Joining us now at the table is Reverend Al Sharpton, our friend, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC, and president of the National Action Network. Joyce Vance is with us by satellite as well. Rev, to you quickly. This was a headline from the Washington Post. Impeachment inquiry shows Trump at the center of Ukraine efforts against rivals. It all comes back to Donald Trump himself, doesn't it?
It all comes back. I think what is amazing, if you start from Fiona Hill all the way to Soundland, is that they are all giving complete and direct evidence that this came from the president. And if that wasn't enough, and it certainly is enough, you have his own acting chief of staff saying, yes, we did it, and get over it. So I don't know what else the American public needs or the Congress needs when you have people saying one right after another that we were directed to do political favors for the president using approved U.S. Congress-approved funds, military aid to Ukraine, and we're going to extract from that. We want you to do certain things politically. And when Mulvaney says that, well, no, we didn't do it for this. We did it for this investigation. We wanted to get into the DNC server. So it's like a bank robber saying, we didn't rob Wells Fargo, we robbed J.P. Morgan. You're still a bank robber. You're supposed to go to jail.
Chris, are you surprised the pace of this? I think that's what's been so striking for all of us who sort of marinated in the Mueller investigation for almost 2 years, and there wasn't any primary evidence until the end of the thing when the decision sort of making was completed. Here we are literally hearing day in, day out testimony from former and current officials. It's like the blockade has been breached.
So let's go down a little bit of history. I mean, in Nixon, the Watergate, you'll remember, he resigned after he released the smoking gun tape. In Clinton, he went months saying, I did not have relations with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky. In this case, they've essentially taken the smoking gun tape and they put it out first. Yeah. And so everything is up at this point. And basically what is happening now is filling in all the blanks. And what the contrast is to Watergate, for a long time in Watergate, it was unclear as to whether this was simply the plumbers or all the other people around Nixon. What's happening here is this is an effort that's been orchestrated by the President of the United States to push aside career diplomats, to put his own political agenda, his own political people. And I think at this point, the game is over, as the Reverend said. It's simply just how it ends and how you fill in the blanks.
The other contrast with the Mueller probe is that the Mueller probe, not only was it slow, but it was sort of opaque. It was sort of hard to understand. Right. It was complicated. It wasn't clear, what exactly collusion may have occurred. And even when we heard about obstruction of justice, there was an argument that, a political argument that had to be made, like, well, can you really get someone for obstruction of justice if you haven't proven the underlying crime? Legally, of course, you can, but that's a harder sell politically. This one seems pretty easy to understand, and that's the danger for this White House. That's what they're worried about. is that there might be a moment where, and the public pressure is such on not just the House Democrats, we're already there for that, but potentially even at least some Senate Republicans, where they might feel like they need to start at taking this more seriously, asking harder questions, perhaps even voting to remove, because we're seeing the impeachment polls. The public has, surged in that direction, time and time again, pushing towards at least the impeachment inquiry. Yeah. Now a majority of Americans want that, according to certain polls, and others at least, and still there's a percentage of people who think he should right now be removed from office. And I think that even if the president were to survive, if he were to be impeached, if he were to put on trial, even if he were to survive, think how politically damaging it would be if a number of Republican senators broke with him. And even if he survived the vote, but if he was just badly damaged, that's not how you want to go into a re-election fight.
Well, and Joyce, to be clear here, already breaking right now are these current and former officials, right? They try to set up this blockade. Instead, you have a wave of witnesses, a cascade of chaos. Pick your alliteration here. The bottom line is, one after another, there are a parade of officials who are detailing their experience, right? And these are folks who worked for, not just for the president in some cases, but for Republicans in the past.
The process here is really dysfunctional, and I have to just briefly disagree with Jonathan's characterization of the Mueller investigation as slow. It was remarkably fast for a public corruption investigation. That may have been some of the problem with it, was the pace it moved at. It really was in many ways ahead of the evidence. They were so far along that some of these warning signs happened much too late for investigators to pick up on. We're seeing sort of the opposite of that here, whereas Chris said the primary document is up out front. We actually know what the sin, what the high crime and misdemeanor is. And now we're hearing from witnesses who are career people. These are not folks with a political axe to grind. They are what prosecutors would call fact witnesses. But the process is dysfunctional because instead of investigation like we had in Watergate or in the Clinton case involving DOJ or special prosecutors, Congress, congressional committees are being forced to conduct what would otherwise be a secret grand jury investigation. That's why we're getting access to so many details so quickly.
And Kim, of course, this was a big week for another individual who's not a member of the White House team, but has been certainly pointing their finger at them over recent days. That's Nancy Pelosi. The photograph that the White House posted from that moment inside the cabinet room earlier this week. The president, you're still kind of struck as someone who works at the White House why they thought this reflected well on them here. It turned into, she became the heroine. She posted as the banner on her Twitter, and it was another example of her being the sort of leading Democrat who has been able to sort of take it to the president repeatedly.
Think about all the memes that we have now about Nancy Pelosi. This photograph in itself, does it mean you have the clapping there? Time after time after time, Nancy Pelosi has shown that she is a brilliant tactician, not just politically, but when it comes to messaging and getting out the message and knowing how to handle this president. She's the only person that the president has not been able to belittle with a nickname, to sort of isolate and make ineffective. She's been very effective in this, and being the face of this impeachment probe is the biggest problem that the president has.
And you knew the president was sort of, grasping for straws when all of a sudden she said he had a meltdown. He said, I didn't have a meltdown. Yeah. You had a meltdown.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
When he does that, he's looking for some quick response here.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.